Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve. I hope you're all having a wonderful Memorial Day weekend here in the States. It's a beautiful weekend, but I did want to comment on the astonishing victory yesterday for Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who, if you don't know, won re-election as president of Turkey yesterday, which officially marks his third decade of rule. It's an astonishingly successful tenure, 20 years in power, and he's transformed Turkey in many respects like never before. And that's really the key here to this victory. What happened yesterday wasn't simply a presidential victory for Erdogan. It was really a civilizational victory. And that's because Erdogan is very much a part of this massive shift happening all over the world towards a far more conservative, nationalist, traditionalist, civilizationalist future. Again, I cannot stress enough to all of you that the frustrations that we're experiencing right now with the woke left here in the United States is being left behind by the vast majority of the world. Upwards of 85-90% of the global population is returning to nation, culture, custom, and tradition. They're leaving leftism behind. They're turning their backs on all things progressive and woke, and they're re-embracing their traditions and customs as the wave of the future. Guillaume Faye referred to it as archaeofuturism, right? Some have called it techno-primitivism, but the basic pattern here is that technology and tradition are uniting together with one another so as to forge a far more conservative, traditionalist future, even in the midst of continuing technological advancements. And Turkey, right along with nations like Russia, Hungary, Poland, China, India, Japan, Sub-Saharan Africa, Turkey, through the leadership of President Erdogan, is actively revitalizing its civilizational roots and reawakening its society as a civilizational state, as opposed to the secular nation state that was the norm prior to Erdogan's tenure. What I think we can say at this point is that the reigning secular paradigm that defined Turkey since its founding in 1923 has all but imploded. With Erdogan's re-election, Turkey will move more and more toward traditional Islamic society and political norms, and for a number of reasons. First and foremost, well, Turkey has prided itself as a secular nation up until recently. We have to realize that this secularism was always rather tenuous. We have to remember that secularism was never the ideology of the masses. It was imposed on Turks from an elite aristocracy, both intellectual elite as well as military elite, imposed from above, largely inspired by Western social and cultural norms. One writer put it this way: modern Turkey is a strange amalgam of Western structures underpinned by Ottoman habits. I mean, that's a great description. Turkey is a strange amalgam of Western structures underpinned by Ottoman habits. Kemalism, which was the secular reforms imposed by Turkey's original leader, Kemal Atatürk, was always in many respects a thoroughly aristocratic and elitist invention imposed from the top down, just like secular politics in India was. It was inevitable that eventually the people would rebel en masse against this elitist top-down westernized secularism and begin voting for politicians that faithfully represented rising nationalist sentiments. And that's exactly what Erdogan has been doing. Under his leadership over the last 20 years, Turkey has shifted dramatically to the cultural and religious and political right. So, for example, much of the national education system in Turkey has been Islamized. Education prior to Erdogan tended to downplay the Ottoman Empire and encultured students to think of secularism and progressivism as enlightened. But now the Ottoman Empire is being taught as an ideal society filled with enriching Islamic culture that is itself the wave of the future. And that's because Erdogan appears very interested in transforming Turkey more into a neo-Anatolian federation of Muslim ethnicities rather than a secular democratic republic of Turkish citizens. And some have argued that this transformation may even at some point involve a revived caliphate. But what all this means is that Turkey really is moving away from the Western European model of liberal democracy and towards a far more traditionalist, conservative culture and social order, which, if you've been following my videos, you know is the wave of the future. Nations are moving more and more towards nation, culture, custom, tradition. They're rejecting secular globalism. They're turning back to civilization, to tradition, and the like as the norm for the future. And this election in Turkey yesterday solidifies that Turkish citizens are indeed committed to this shift towards a more traditionalist, conservative vision of faith and life. In terms of geopolitics, this election means that Turkey will continue to at least tacitly back Russia and its special military operation in Ukraine. The U.S. and NATO officials were doing everything they possibly could to get rid of Erdogan and back his more progressive, pro-Western opponent. For a while, it looked like they were going to be successful. Erdogan was way down in the polls for months, but he tapped into the rhetoric. Again, it's called a rhetoric of restoration politics, where the glories of Turkey's civilizational past are being reawakened as a necessary component to a new geopolitics, where Turkey's role on the international stage is reimagined in relation to reawakened civilizations all over the world, but particularly Russia, China, India. And this is completely redefining Turkey's position on the geopolitical map. In their tacit backing of Russia, Turkey really is radically undermining NATO and its rather desperate and failed attempts at isolating Putin. And it's putting Turkey in a position of very real leadership in the emergence of a far more traditionalist and conservative world. So all of this is to say that Erdogan's victory yesterday in many respects has solidified the rise of that conservative civilizationalist world and Turkey's very important strategic place in that world. God bless.